Hey everyone, welcome back to another podcast. In this one, we're going to be interviewing Alfie. So, for those of you who don't know who Alfie is, he also came from Smite, just like myself, and he is a top 500 one above all rivals player right now. So he kind of like bounces between top 500 and Eternity, and he also competes. He competes on a very good team. I believe they placed top 12 in the last event, just kind of being a relatively new form team, and he's looking to place higher in the future. So this podcast in particular, or this episode, is really geared towards learning from Alfie. So Alfie is a tank main, and I know I'm a support main. Most of the videos I upload are support style videos, but a lot of things he's going to be talking about in this episode apply to all roles, not just tank, so don't worry. But yeah, a lot of the stuff he is talking about is just really, really good stuff to learn from. And that's the whole goal. That's the whole point of this episode, is just to learn from Alfie, especially if you're trying to climb the rank ladder, if you're trying to get into competitive, or maybe you just want to become better to brag to your friends or whatever the case, right? Like we all want to be better at the stuff we do. So I'm hoping that this episode in particular with Alfie helps to sort of shed some light on some things, some holes that might be missing in your gameplay. And overall, I hope it just really benefits you as an individual player by increasing your skill and knowledge about the game. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this episode. I hope you guys enjoy and learn a lot. Yo, we got Alfie in here today. What's up, Alfie? How you doing? How you
What's
doing?
up? What's up? Doing great, doing great.
Let's go, baby. For those of you that don't know, Alfie is a cracked Marvel Rivals player. And in fact, let's kind of get into your history a little bit real quick. Just so a breakdown. What do you place right now, or rather, what's the highest rank that you've achieved in Rivals so far?
So in Rivals, I believe it was top 110 I got in season 0. Right now I'm like right outside top 500. I kind of bounce in and out. And I peaked like 328 when above all last season. Now it's like 120, trying to make the final push to get top 500, to get that little tiny little thing in the top right corner of your little profile banner. Hopefully I'll get it in time.
Yeah, bro, they got to change that. Like, they got to make it something else. I don't know. It's
Yeah, I saw next season they're doing like 4 different ones for like GM, Celestial, Eternity, and One Above All. Because right now it's just like GM and then top 500. So it's like it's like
that's
all
true.
the
That's true.
GM players are just merged with everyone.
Yeah, no, definitely. And did you have any previous Overwatch background as well? Did you play a lot of Overwatch?
I played like in the OG days back in like 2016. I was a tank main back then too. I played a lot of Zarya, Reinhardt, Roadhog was super fun just to like hook a random backliner. But back then, I was still on console. I didn't move to PC till 2019, I think. I was on Xbox before that.
And you were you top 500 in Overwatch as well?
No, I was Masters peak, I think, like 3600 SR kind of level.
Yeah, I mean, it's still better than most. That's good.
Above average, slightly above average.
Yeah, you sounded disappointed in that answer, so I had to like gas it up a bit. And so you're currently competing, right? You played in the last tournament as well?
Yeah, I played with a group of guys. Fandori invited me. We just played ranked together, and he's like, "Oh, you seem really good." So I tried out for him, and he's like, "Yeah, I really like your play style." And then after that, I moved to trial for Euphoria, which was an established team already. They got second in the closed beta tourney, I think. So I've been playing with a group of guys for about a month now. The trials ended like mid-January, I want to say. And I just played strange like the whole time. And they're like, "Well, he might be a one trick, but we'll give him a shot."
Yeah, he's a good one.
Yeah,
He's a
I showed that they could play Mag at least for one game. I think I had like 13 games of Strange and one Magneto game in the trial run.
And what place did you guys get?
For in the first one we got top 12, I believe. So we got like the top 16 banner.
Nice,
We got
nice. Hell yeah.
eliminated to Rad Esports, I believe. So they're a pretty good team. I wasn't too disappointed. Obviously, I wanted to go as high as I could, but top 16 I was satisfied with.
Yeah, and you guys are looking to compete in this next one, I assume, too?
Yeah, I'm planning to complete with Euphoria. We've worked on a lot. I want to say like a top 8 team, but hopefully we can push higher. Still feeling it out, so I got a lot of things to learn.
Definitely, definitely. Well, more power to you guys. I hope you guys succeed.
Appreciate it.
Let's talk about this climb. So I want this to be sort of like a more of a learning format episode. Just
Mhm.
kind of especially for players that want to climb and get better at the game, whether they want to compete, just play ranked, or just show off to their friends that they're good at rivals.
Yeah, of course.
So kind of want to maybe shove out maybe a common question out of the way. Of course, you're a tank main. Is there any specific easy character to climb with, or like for you in particular, was there an easy character?
For me, I would say it's Strange. I think you normally want to be like the main tank if you're playing tank, because if you're off tank, you kind of rely on other people to like take the space, and your job is to like maintain the space after it's been taken. So like let's say you're playing Strange Magneto, for example. Strange is the guy walking forward, taking the space, applying pressure to the back line. Magneto is the guy standing in that space to maintain it. He bubbles the Strange in, he might shield the back line, might turn to peel. So I would say it's a little bit easier to play like Strange, Groot, sometimes even Venom. Venom would be almost considered an off tank in theory, but he is the one creating the space. So I would almost consider him a main tank in that sense, is that he's space creation tool.
Interesting. So you have main tank, off tank. Is there like any other type of tank as well? And like what other characters would fall into those categories?
I would say, let me just go over the list just to make sure I don't miss anyone here. So obviously Hulk off tank. His job is pretty much just to cover an angle. So let's say there's a Hela taking a top right corner, mark it. Like don't let her just shoot into your team. Captain America dive tank. Both of those would be like considered off tanks. His job is to just hard dive their backline, make their healers turn. Strange, simple main tank. If anyone's ever played Reinhardt or if you played solo lane back in Smite, basically the exact same thing. Your job is to just apply pressure to their front, not really trying to dive their backline, just trying to make space for your team, create angles. Groot, kind of the same thing as Strange, main tank. Maybe you're going for wall plays, slightly different. Magneto, he can fit the main tank role, but he's not as good as Strange as taking the space. Like I said before, he's really good at maintaining the space, maybe bubbling someone in like a Star-Lord or Magic to apply threat to their backline as kind of a win con. Penny Parker, I haven't got a lot of time in her, honestly. Definitely an off tank. She's not great right now. I think next patch, when she gets some invulnerability or like some use, she'll be better. Thor's another off tank. His job is to just like displace their main tank. So he kind of plays on the front line, assisting your Strange to help win that battle. And then Venom, another dive tank, kind of like Captain America, but can also dive the front line. Captain, you only want to dive back line, I would say.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so, and actually, I kind of wanted to get into this maybe a bit later, but I think now is a good time to get into it. So, if you were to, if we were to list out all these things, so like Strange, Group, Magneto, so on and so forth, um, what would be a good time to pick them? Uh, who they counter, so like any specific characters or comps that they counter, and then like who kind of counters them as well.
We'll just start down the list. We could just do like Hulk to start.
Sure, yeah.
I would say ideally Hulk, you want to pair with a Strange. That team up is really OP. A lot of people don't know. You remember the Strange nerf where they made the fall off damage to
Yeah,
his
yeah.
E? When you have a Hulk, the fall off damage doesn't exist anymore. So that whole 10 meters is just full damage. And it also makes it so the Strange at 100 charge can kill through any character, any squishy in the game. So like Invis, she has 275 HP. So let's say you ulted an Invis as Strange and you only had your regular E, no Hulk and power. It only does 260. So you want to be able to kill her through your ult without any extra damage. But with a Hulk, if you have 100 charge, or I think it's like 89 or something technically, you can just one shot her through with your E, no assistance needed. So I would really like to pair those two together. Captain America, or like counters to Hulk, there aren't really a ton. I would say Punisher's really good. Something that can mark him out with quick, heavy burst damage before he can just jump out. And that's going to be the same thing with Venom. Punisher, Rocket combo, super good to counter those dive comps. Because the Rocket is like the hardest character in the game to dive. So if you are struggling into the dive, Rocket Raccoon, Punny, Bucky, that's just full anti-dive. Like there's no way to really dive that kind of a comp. And then for like picking wise, I would say Strange. You're always good to pick Strange. Uh, if you're like a player that likes to play Magneto and Strange equally, I would say pick Strange when you're on Dom all the time. If you have to solo tank, it is easier to solo tank on Magneto, in my opinion, because you have two different buttons to like completely save your life. Strange, like your shield is going to break eventually. Groot, you pretty much have to ban Wolf if you're gonna just pick Groot in like a regular rank game. It's not as bad in the competitive scene to play Groot into Wolf, but in ranked, it's very difficult to have an easy game on Groot when there's a Wolf on the enemy team. Captain America Venom dive, like I said, can be countered by high damage throughput, like the Punisher and like Bucky, especially with the Raccoon team up. But honestly, Captain is just kind of like a worse Venom at this point in the game. The only time I would really pick captain is if you're on like a payload map or a dom map and you need to get out quick and stall. Like let's say you're playing mag in that game and like the payload's about to get captured by the enemy team. You can switch cap and sprint out there, and he's really good at stalling. I actually, in just the recent tournament, did one of those plays, and it's just so OP to be able to run at a base. Penny Parker, I'd pretty much never pick her. Unfortunately, she's just not great right now. There is like a TikTok tech on Spider Islands, you know, that little bell tower
Yeah,
right out.
yeah.
Have you seen the tech on that?
Oh, with Penny? No, does it have something to do with mines?
Yeah, the bell tower, when it drops, the bell can fully like encapsulate your shift, like your little mine spawner, and it's just unbreakable. So if you
What?
break that bell tower before the round, or like as the round starts and they don't break your mine, there's just permanent mine spawner in there.
What?
So I guess in that scenario, like you could use that. I think they're patching it pretty soon,
Yeah, I
but
was about to say that has to get patched at some point, right?
yeah, it's technically used. We've scrimmed teams and they've done it. So
Maybe they just make it a feature like Moon Knight ult. You know how like Moon Knight ult was like double the damage? They're just like, we're gonna make that a feature now.
yeah, we'll just keep that. Like why not?
Yeah.
And then Thor, I've seen a couple comps in competitive play where teams will experiment with like Asgard, and that would be Thor, Loki, and Hela. And that way, if the Hela gets a kill, and let's say Thor and Loki are both dead, they just get double res. That's kind of the only time I would play it is if you have a Hela. But you can also play it as an off tank. He's not as good right now as Magneto or as Bruce or as Hulk, sorry, but he's definitely like okay, especially with that Hela. He becomes like a semi decent character.
Yeah, I've been seeing him get picked quite a bit recently, actually, at least in my games. You know, like celestial lobbies. I don't know if it's happening in eternity lobbies or not. But yeah, I mean Thor's been getting picked a lot and he does a pretty good job at just diving the back line. So
Yeah, he definitely can. He's got like a different, like a lot of versatility, just like Hulk, where he can kind of dive, but then also help with the frontline battle with his bubble and exile and just like long range damage. And then Thor could just like press F and have his Thor force engage and three shot a healer. So yeah, his dive is pretty good.
would you say that Bucky is also kind of a good counter to some of these characters like Groot?
Yes, yeah, I would say Bucky's really good. Bucky and Wolf both just displacement. They're win cons as well.
Okay, yeah. So like any form of like displacement character is probably just gonna like hard destroy
Yeah,
Groot.
hard demolish that. And like mainly damage throughput. So the punny is also really good into Groot. Like if they're just a stationary chunky guy with no shield or like movement ability, anything that can just sit there and spray at him is going to be really good. So your punnies, your Bucky to displace them, put them in a different position. Because what's Groot going to do if Bucky hooks him, spam walls around him, and like Fortnite box himself in?
Right, right.
Yeah, it's like he is done for at that point.
Yeah, I've always liked the Rocket Punisher comp into Groot too, just like destroying walls.
Oh yeah,
How about like knowing when to ult? So I know like ulting is it's a really, really big aspect to this game. At least it is for supports. I can imagine for DPS and tanks as well. And I think like one of the biggest things that I've seen that separates, say, lower ranking players from higher ranking players is just knowing when and how to use their ult.
Mhm.
What sort of process do you go by when trying to ult? Like, do you have like, for example, let's take Strange, right? Because you play a lot of Strange. Would you say he's like your best tank?
Yeah. I have like 100. I have a decent amount of time on him, so yeah, he's definitely the best tank.
Yeah, let's take Strange. So like are you waiting out the healer ults? Are you like just trying to let it rip whenever you see a great opportunity for it, like a lot of people group together? Like how are you thinking about going around a Strange ult?
So for most tank alts, it's pretty reactionary. I was trying to describe this to like one of my teammates as well because he's a DPS main and he's like, I don't understand how it's so hard to like communicate when you're gonna ult. I'm like, well, it's like this has to happen. Like let's say there's a Bucky and like a Luna Snow on the enemy team. If you're strange ulting, you can get both Hook and Frozen out of it. So you have to be like, okay, is there Bucky looking up into the sky when I shift up or something like that? So a big difference I would say between lower ranking strange players and higher ranking ones is thinking about what the enemy composition does to cancel your ultimate. So like yes, do I see a group of people and let's say they can't cancel it? Like they're on Punisher, Hela maybe. Let's say they've got a Mantis and I don't know, Rocket Raccoon. There's not a lot to cancel it while I'm flying in the air. If I was on the ground, Mantis could sleep it. But you really have to think about what the backline can do. Like if I fly up into the air and there's an invis woman, her natural reaction is going to be to boot me away if I ult. And it's going to be very easy for her to do it because it's just a straight shot at my noggin, and I'm normally like no cover in the air. So that's a big part, is thinking about what they can do to stop your ultimate or displace you while you're going for it. For Strange specifically, your E is really important. So let's say you want to cancel a cloak ultimate and she's like ulted right away. Your E has to be up. And normally what I like to do is keep it around 80. So I'll like stop dealing damage to keep it at 80. Because if it gets to 100, you like get anti-healed and it starts decaying. Because you need 100 charge to kill her through with your ult. And then you pretty much try and time it to the 4th dash of her ultimate. And then ult, like boom, right away. And then right away E. Because their Strange is going to be coming to defend it. So for when I would look to ult is, let's say, I normally communicate a lot in my rank games and in comp as well. So if I have a storm that's going to force out a cloak ult, and then I'm like, okay, well, I could cancel the cloak ult after it's done. And then we don't even have to like support ult mirror. So in that scenario, I'm saving it for that. Like I'm not going to use it even if I see a big moment. But then also sometimes in Dom, let's say you've taken a lot of space, you've captured the point. You don't necessarily have to save it for when they support ult. You could make an aggressive play now to fully stagger. Now you can easily guarantee like 30% more on your capture if you just ult and kill one person, because they can't fight 5v6. So it's really about understanding what your goal is with the ult. So if you're on Dom or something, the goal is to win the Dom thing. So you don't just want to sprint out and rip your ultimate just to force the support ult for them to walk you back, you mirror, and do that whole game. You want to communicate with your team, be like, all right, can someone else get their ult out that wouldn't guarantee? Because Strange ult's really good at killing people. Star-Lord ult, for example, it's very hard to kill people with it, especially if they got like a Loki or an Invis ult, but it could force the ult. So if you have a Star-Lord, you can be like, oh, Star-Lord, you ult, force the Invis, and we'll try and kill through it with my ult, or something like that would be a good communication. Or Psylocke, for example, is another one that makes healers panic a lot of the time, even though sometimes it's not as threatening as like a Strange ult. If it's used first, they might panic, and you guys could pressure off that. And then with that chaos, you could find a good Strange ult. So
Okay, so you're looking for other players to make the play by forcing support ults, and then you're looking to go in and
a
capitalize off
lot
of
of the
that
time,
exchange.
yes. I would normally try and go for canceling a support ult if possible. Obviously, there's some you can't, like Luna. You can't do anything about it. So in a game where there's a Luna Loki, you normally want to be the one to ult first and force out their Luna ult, and then that way your Luna could get out a better ultimate. Like she could get second ult and then you guys win the fight. But if you hold your ultimate for too long, waiting for someone to make a play in that kind of game, then you grief, because their Strange could go for an ult and then your Luna has to ult first. So it really is just understanding the compositions and like, what is my goal with this ultimate? If it is just to get a support ult out, then you can just do that super easy. You just fly up into the air and boom, press the button, and most of the time you can get it off and maybe even kill someone if their Luna waits. But most of the time the Luna will just press the button and your ult's not going to do anything at that point.
Yeah, I feel like as like a support main, it's always typically a good ult if you say cancel the enemy Strange ult or the Star-Lord ult, but then at other points they're looking for you to do that. Like that's part of their game, that's part of their plan
That's
for you
like
to want
the
to do that.
goal, right? Like it.
Yeah.
I would say as a Strange player, it is never bad for you to try and ult early to force out a support ult. That would be like my rule of thumb. Like if you know, okay, they have invis, like you don't have to save for some. You could make the proactive play. I personally will try and communicate with my team to see if my DPS could make the play. But if they're not going to, or if they're like, I don't want to do that, like let's say my Hello wants to save ult for when she's about to die or something, or I don't have like a good ult to force it. Maybe we're on Punisher. Punisher doesn't always force an ult, right? So you're like, okay, well, I could force the ult, like, and just communicate with your team and figure out like, okay, I'll just be the ult. Like, I won't get any kills with my ult this game, but I'll force out some support ults here, and that is fine. That is totally a way to win the game.
Yeah, it's funny. Like Punisher might not force an ult by himself, but like Punisher Rocket combo, I'm ripping that shit every single time.
No, that combo is goated. I can kill through an ult. Like,
Yeah, I know, dude. I get so scared. I'm like, I don't even know if this is gonna save us.
right?
I mean, like, speaking of that too, like, do you think that's probably one of the best team ups in the game right now?
I think it will be. I think right now it's only great if you also have a Bucky, the double ammo.
Oh yeah,
I,
it's
I
true,
think
true.
it's like okay. I would run it with triple support. It's one of like the
Yeah,
triple support comps I would run, but missing out on a trank is just not the greatest right now, especially for ranked. It's more viable and competitive because you can play around the trank. But in ranked, people are like, oh my god, we just don't have another trank. Like it's GG. There's no like people aren't really thinking like, oh, we could just kite the trank or do something like that.
And by trank you mean
Like a Luna ult, like
okay.
any ult that basically makes you invulnerable outside of very niche kill things like a Groot Moon Knight combo or Punisher Rocket combo, like we're talking about.
Okay, gotcha.
Basically, in an immortality field that you cast,
Yeah.
any support ult, Mantis is like almost a trank. It's like 70%.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Mantis ult's like maybe one of the weaker like tranks. I'm learning this new lingo right
Yeah,
here, so
yeah,
it's good.
it's stolen from Zenyatta. That's all it's from. It's because
Oh,
his was like
interesting. Okay.
his is like called a trank, so it's just like everyone's got Zenyatta ult in this game, so we'll
Yeah,
just
that
call
makes
all the
sense.
ultimates trank.
So for comp, do you see like a lot of the same comps that you see in ranked, like for comp, or because I know you said earlier it was a little bit like, for example, Wolverine, right? Like maybe he's not picked up in comp too much. So do you see like a lot of similarities or a lot of differences between comp and ranked?
The difference I would say is that the picks that feel troll in ranked actually can work a lot better in competitive.
Oh, okay.
Like Spider-Man is a pretty thought to be noob pick, right? Like, oh, that's just a terrible character, not worth it at all. But if you pair it with a Venom and you 3-2-1 your dive, it's actually a pretty good character. Not a lot of people play it. I've only personally seen like 2 or 3 people in our comp games pull it out, and it doesn't always work that good, but it like can, it has more agency than just solo Spider-Man swinging into the back line. Iron Fist is another one that I haven't personally seen a lot of, but I believe in a competitive environment that he can be a playable character as like a solo diver to just distract the backline, kind of like the Captain America. Like Cap's never going to kill someone most of the time diving, but Iron Fist is just that in a DPS form. He has a little bit more kill threat, less survivability, so just kind of a trade off in what you want to do with that.
Yeah, makes sense. And they're also like kind of changing him around a little bit. Not like changing his kit, but changing his numbers around, right? With this new upcoming update.
Giving him like he might actually be really good because I think they gave him 50 HP and there was a massive wall of text about the Luna team
Yeah.
up. So I'm like, I don't care that much. If he's OP, he's OP. Like I ain't reading all that.
I'll experience it in game. It's like I watch anime over reading the manga, like I want to see the visuals.
Yeah, like just show me it working and then I'll believe it. Like I don't really care if it does 27 or 23 damage. Like no big difference to me.
When you're picking for ranked, are you picking based on your overall team comp, or are you just like kind of picking like do you have like one or two characters in mind that you play every game? For example, Strange, right? Or do you maybe try to pick depending on the team comp that you have? For example, if you have a Spider-Man, you might want to play Venom for that team up.
I would say if you're like a fill tank player, that is a really good strategy to come at it with. Like, oh, we have a Spider-Man, or we're playing like more of a bunker comp. Like, let's say you're playing Wolverine Bucky. You don't really need a dive character, right? Like, your job as a tank is just to make space so the Wolf and Bucky can get their win cons off. So, like, a Strange Mag or Strange Hulk would be really good. Even Mag Hulk, like double bubble. You just bubble in the Wolf, and then he comes back and you bubble him again. It's like, okay, this guy's immortal now. For me personally, I play main tank and I will just normally play Strange or Magneto every game. If I have another Strange player, I'll flex to Mag to help him out. Or if Strange gets banned, I'll play Groot. Because most of the high rank games, it's like, Wolf is like a 50% ban rate. So Groot's always like a pretty safe fallback pick. And it's pretty, I would say, yeah, if you are a dive tank player, just play dive. Don't necessarily force yourself to conform to your teammates. Because the goal of ranked, at least in my opinion, should be to practice for competitive. Like you're trying to improve yourself as a player. But if you want to be a fill player, then do it, right? Like there are tank players that just play all the tanks. They're like, oh, I played 10 hours of Strange, 12 hours of Magneto, 15 hours of Venom, all that. And then you just play what your team needs. You need a Magneto here to bubble in. Like I said earlier, it was like solo tank mags, just the best option. Like, okay, I don't have a tank player. Maybe I don't want to play Strange. I'll play Mag this game. That's how I come at it a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, I feel like, and this isn't just for rivals, but I feel like in almost every game that I've played, sort of one tricking. I wouldn't say one tricking is good, but like playing your comfort picks is a lot better than, as you said, kind of like forcing yourself to play a fill character for your team if you're not a fill player, right?
Yeah, it's like there's no reason to. There's no reason to force yourself to play something. Now, what I would say to clarify for like one tricking, don't just one trick a character because you enjoy it. Like it sounds mean, but it's like there are a lot of Rocket Raccoon one tricks. And like, yes, is he great with Punny and Bucky? I don't mind seeing him if I have a Punny on my team. But Raccoon with like hella Iron Fist isn't really doing a lot, you know? Like I'd rather have a Luna or a Loki to copy the Luna or something that like assists what the team comp has. So I would say when you do choose to play characters, at least have a few that do different jobs. So if you're like a support main, maybe you play Luna, Mantis, and Invis, you know, and like those three are good because you could play Mantis if you're like an off healer, or maybe when she gets a little bit better, obviously, from this next patch. Luna, you're playing main healer, and then Invis, you're like kind of a pseudo main healer, kind of a off healer. Like you could flex both roles. Same thing with tank, like being able to play Strange Mag Groot, that's good. Like you're a main tank player. And then if you could learn a little, like I personally play a little bit of Hulk. So if I really need to, I could flex to Hulk. If for whatever reason Magneto gets banned or I have a strange player and I'm like, screw it, I'll play Hulk here and just empower him and help him out. And the same thing for DPS. Like there's anchor DPS playstyle, which is like the punny, the hella, like you're just sitting kind of with your core, with your main team and just shooting either a tank, maybe taking a slight off angle. And then you have your flankers, which Psylocke or maybe a Star-Lord even or a BP. And if you can play that role, it's good. Like if you are a flanker player, just diversify yourself within a couple of those flanker characters and you're fine. Maybe have like one anchor DPS in the bag. That's how I would come about it when playing characters. And then try and adapt to the meta. Like if you really want to climb, the meta is going to shift, right? Like I personally think Mantis will be really good next patch. A lot of people thinking Raccoon will be good next patch. So if you've never played Raccoon before and Raccoon becomes really good, you should try, like if you do want to climb, you should try and learn the characters that are the best.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. My Raccoon's such a funny character because if you take away the team up, he like has literally nothing in his kit, in his base kit. Like he has his right click, he has his left click, and then he just has his jetpack, but he has like nothing else in his base kit to help anybody.
Yeah, you're just there. You're just spamming right click, like just on some high ground somewhere. You could scurry. You're unkillable. I guess like you should be undying in a lot of games, to be honest. And the res is pretty good. Like that's what I mean with you can kind of use it in competitive better because you're like, well, we have a res, so all right, Star-Lord, you're our designated griefer, and you just send him in there and hope he gets a 1-for-1, or like gets a lot of alt charge, and then he just gets res, so it's no big deal.
Yeah. And sorry, I wanted to clarify, like besides the res, in the middle of combat.
The rest of the kit is like
it's just like I like Raccoon on really big walkbacks. So like on Convoy, for example, if you're on defense, like that first push or that first defense that you're doing, like typically that's a longer walkback, at least from what I've noticed on like a lot of the maps. And so typically I like to just play Raccoon, get that res off, so some goofball messes up.
Yeah, right. Like you can stabilize after. Yeah, I've seen a lot of Raccoon on like Path, for example. That's like one of the longer walkbacks. Or like Spider Islands is pretty good for the first. Because what my team does on Spider Islands is we hold like right on that spawn door. So and then we just die.
Oh, okay.
Because it kind of curls around to the left and goes up that little staircase.
Yeah.
And most teams will hold like right at the end of that staircase, which is pretty much the end of the point anyway. So you'll like kite back that whole time as the payload's pushing. So we just thought, well, we can just die on cart, stop it from pushing, then we get to come back for the staircase. So in that scenario, you could just play Raccoon for that like spawn hold. That way, if someone does just grief and die, but gets a trade, then you respawn. That could definitely work.
I'm trying to think. So like you guys just don't get hard punished for doing that? Because I mean, aren't they just at that point sitting in their healing base and they're just not taking damage?
They have to come out because the way the bell tower breaks on Spider Island, part of the wall stays, so you can just hide behind that. And then there's like a little pedestal behind it that has a wall, so they can't really shoot you 100% from spawn unless you swing them. And they have to come out and push the cart eventually. So
Yeah,
it's like no matter what, if you stall for like 30 seconds there, it's good. Because if you don't stall, then that cart just free pushes and comes all the way around the corner. And there's not like a lot of holding angles.
that makes a lot of sense. I want to try to convince my rank teammates to do that, but I know no one's going to listen.
Dude, it's so hard. I tried every single game. I'm like, guys, we should spawn hold. And then I have to like ping all the different locations for people to stay. I'm like, healers, you stay here. Mag, you mark this. It's like, I've almost given up on it because it's so complicated. But even if it just works a little bit, it's like, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can imagine it can be maybe like a little bit easier at a higher level too, because at that point, I feel like all the same people are kind of in your games, like rotating in and out. With the exception of like maybe newer players, or not newer players, but newer players to that rank getting up there.
Mhm.
So like I feel like at that point, like people kind of know you. So if you are like IGLing pretty well, people might be like, oh, like I know Alfie, for example. I'm gonna
Yeah.
listen to this guy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like, okay, I can trust him a little bit. Like, I've
Yeah.
seen his name at least once before.
Yeah. But if it's like platinum, like nah, that's a war zone.
Dude, yeah, no,
Yeah.
don't do okay, yeah, don't do the spawn hole if you're in platinum.
Yeah.
Like, you just play wherever you feel like playing.
I mean, that actually brings me to a point. So how do you feel about IGLing when it comes to ranked? Like, do you feel like it seems like you do feel like overall it makes the game easier, but do you also feel like a lot of people aren't listening to you, and sometimes it's just like maybe it's just better if I don't IGL? Like, is it a feel thing? If you're really trying to climb, are you IGLing?
I would IGL if you're trying to climb.
Okay.
I would I would try and learn as much as you can about like what other roles want to do. And that can just be you don't have to play the roles. You can just like theorize, like watch a game back, right? And like pretend that you're each character, like pretend you're the Luna. Like, okay, what does my Luna want to ult here? Well, she might ult the Strange ult, she might ult the Hella ult, or like the Starboard, for example, whatever comp they're running. And then you could think, well, like, okay, if I calm, like a lot of supports, you've seen it, they double ult, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you've even like done it
Oh,
before,
a
and
hundred
it's
percent.
hard. And like a lot of supports aren't necessarily IGL players, and because it's like normally tanks or like DPS that come from other games that want to IGL. So you as a tank player can take it into your hands, and be like, all right, we can Luna ult this or like mirror, and it's totally fine. I in my games personally, it's either like they listen and awesome we win, or like they don't, and sometimes it still works out. But it's a might as well try kind of thing for me. It's like I'm gonna bring what I can to the team to help myself win this game. Like if I know they're about to Luna ult, I'm like, I can be Loki, copy Luna like pre-fight, and then we just mirror their Luna when she comes into ult or something like that. Like whatever you can say that you think of is very helpful for your team, and I think you should do it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's very true. I feel like too as a support man, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you have to focus on, like keeping ally A alive, keeping ally B alive that's over here for some reason. And then somebody behind you, like you're trying to like look everywhere, right? Like um and I feel like as a tank, maybe it's a little bit more straightforward where you're walking up and like you're kind of focused on what's in front of you a little bit. So like maybe it's a little bit easier to IGL and get people to like kind of do things that they wouldn't do in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you were to compare it to Smite, right? It's like the solo laner can just see the battlefield most of the time, or like the support can. But sometimes your mid isn't able to like walk into a position to see like, oh, where are they? You know. So as the solo laner, or like as the tank in this game, for example, you can tell your support like, oh yeah, they're like looking to Starboard ult or something. Like, oh, Starboard just flew up in front of my face, like to the top right. Like, oh, care the Starboard ult, we should invis ult it or something, and just give that calm to your team. And I agree, yeah, it's like not only as a support do you have a lot to worry about, but you just can't see everything. Like you just see your team most of the time. Maybe if you're making like an aggressive invis pull play, you might be able to like jump up and kind of see their backline for a second, but you don't necessarily know where they're positioned. And sometimes you might just get flanked as well. And then you're like, oh god, like everything's going on, and you have to turn. And there's like no way you can be like, oh yeah, let me plan my ult for this fight in this meantime while there's a Psylocke shooting me in the butt the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And there's actually so one point you brought up earlier was, looking at different roles and kind of like seeing how other roles play and stuff like that, and that maybe makes you play better at your role. And I can speak a lot of truth to that because, I'm a support main, but sometimes I'll play tank off role if I need to flex or nobody's budging. Um and say like Groot, for example, is my character because I love Ymir and Smite, so I just love the
Hey,
walls.
like I got him walling them off.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And just like playing Groot, I kind of know how the healers want to play, or rather should be playing, because I play healers so much. So like I guess in the back of my mind, as I'm playing Groot, I'm sort of positioning myself in a way that my healers are having an easier time to heal me, right? Or I'm like maybe not pushing up as far because I know how much of a pain in the ass it is for my healers to kind of push up with me to get that angle on me.
Yes, that's a perfect thing to understand. Is that is called like LOSing, so like line of sight, and that's something like as a tank you really have to understand. So I would say if you're a tank player, you should really be paying attention to your healers. And if you're dying a lot in your games and you're thinking, oh, it's my healer's fault, like, oh, I'm blaming, go look back at your game, watch when you die. Did you swing around a wall? Maybe you out like let's say you're playing Midtown, for example. You know how it kind of curves up that first point and goes to the left around that ambulance? Well, what if you pushed up too far and swung that ambulance to the left? And you're like, oh, I just died. No heals, no heals. Your healers can't see you. Like maybe they're on cart. If they're not to the right already, then you just LOS them. You killed yourself. So you really understanding like line of sight and how you can break it and how you can maintain it. Like where can I push to not LOS my healers, but to also take as much space in this advantage as possible is the big difference between like a good tank player and a bad one a lot of the time.
Do you and this one's gonna be a little controversial. Do you think there's a lot of luck involved when it comes to climbing the ranked ladder?
Oh yeah. No, there definitely is. Especially I mean it's kind of I would say it's mindset first and then sometimes luck. So if you're just rage queuing and you're not playing your best, then you're going to lose. And that's not really luck. And you can it's like poker, right? Like poker, there's skill to it, but you also need to know when to fold and to not get angry. Like if I have two fill support players on my team, which still happens, and the people just have no idea how to play support, we're probably going to lose. Like I shouldn't let it affect my mental too much. And then sometimes that happens at like 7 out of 10 times in the day. I would say to minimize the RNG as you're climbing the ranks. Let's say you have no friends that play the game and you're like just learning, add people. Like on my way up, I've had to cap friends list like the whole time I played the game because I just add whoever does good in the game. I'm like, oh, their Bucky was really good. Like I saw him maintaining angles. He hooked me a lot. Like he knew how to hook me through my shield. I'm like, I'm adding that guy. Like I might play with him sometime. I might never play with him ever, but if I need a queue partner, like at least I can invite someone. Just having like a list of 100 people that might be online at any given time is perfect. So as you're climbing, just I might be in plat, but that's a really good plat player. Like I see him going places. Add that guy, queue with him right away.
Yeah, and then like the opposite is true too. Somebody's shitting the bed on your team. Avoid him. Avoid.
Yeah,
avoid.
get him out of there. Like, dude, my avoid list is full every day. I got a whole new group of people. It doesn't matter what rank you are. Everyone like is terrible relatively to something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I usually do like a skip a queue too. Like, all right, let me just wait like a 3 minute. Yeah, 100%. Let me wait 3 minutes and then re-queue back up.
Yeah, like there's 3 Jeff OTPs in this or one trick players in this game. Like I'm done. I'm out of here.
I feel like ranked has a lot of luck. But there's also a lot of skill too, right? Because if there wasn't any skill at all, you wouldn't have the same players getting to the same ranks, right? Like if it was just luck, then someone that hits Eternity Season 0 might not hit Eternity again, but like you're kind of seeing the same consistencies. Or if someone's, for example, leveling up Smurf accounts, right? Like you hit Eternity or one above all, hop on 1 or 2 other Smurfs, and next thing you know, those are also in Eternity.
Yeah, I would say the luck is like it's like a statistic thing. It's like an interquartile range, right? It's like you can only like your skill will bring you to a point, and your average skill will be, let's just say you're like average Eternity 50, right? That player could climb to 1 above all 250 and then drop to like Celestial 2. So there's like a range at which the luck would vary what rank you're at. And you just need to be like, okay with that. Like I'll even drop to Celestial 2 or like I dropped to Celestial 3 one day and then I just climb back up. And just like not getting annoyed with like, just don't give up, you just keep playing. And if you're like a GM player, you might peak GM 1 and then drop all the way to D3. Like that's just the range of luck because there's so much point movement, right? Like you can lose 20 points a game when you're in Diamond and win 30. So sometimes you can just get a luck streak and get like 300 points, but you might have not really deserved all those 300 points. You just got the team that all plays like a regular 2-2-2 comp. Everyone's on their main role kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like one of those games where it's like, okay, no matter how I play in this game, if I'm on the enemy team, I either win or I lose. One of those things,
Oh, there's definitely, I would say like 25% of games are just decided on the loading screen. I'm like, okay, GG. Like they've just got the top 4 players in the game, and I got 2 Rocket players. Like we are not winning this one.
Do you think the system tries to push you at all? Like, so if you fall, say for example, you're, I don't know, Celestial 2, and you fall back down to like GM2 or GM1, do you think the system tries to push you forward? And the reason why I ask that is because for me, at least when I was climbing, I remember it was like really hard for me to initially get to GM1, right? And as I told you off screen, I was in Celestial 1 just now, and then over the weekend I just went on a massive L streak pretty much. I won some games here and there, but a lot of L's, and now I'm back in Celestial 3. And I even dropped down to GM1. But when I got into GM1, it felt like really easy to climb back up. And it was the same thing too when I was in GM for season 0, for example, and I dropped back down to Diamond. It was really easy for me to get from Diamond 1 back up into GM. And it felt like almost the game, the system itself was giving me more points. Like,
Yeah, like, it just felt bad for you. It was like,
yeah,
okay, get this
yeah,
guy
yeah.
back up.
Well, I mean, like, for example, when I dropped down to GM1, I got like 24, 25 points when I was winning to get back into Celestial. So I was wondering, and I don't remember, I mean, maybe I could be capping on this, but I don't actually remember getting that many points most of the time when I was in GM1 originally. So I was wondering if maybe like the system wants to push you back up to the level that you were at if you do fall.
I don't know 100%. There are definitely rumors of the quote unquote like 50-50, like, oh, the system's against me or it's for me. I think to an extent it might be like a little bit true. That's kind of just like conspiracy theory though, is like, oh, they're like forcing me to win or forcing me to lose. I would say it probably just feels easier because like you are just gonna get easier lobbies as you fall, right? Like if
Yeah,
you
that's
fall
true.
from GM1 to Diamond 1, you're like, you are just better than those players. So once you finally do get like a solid team, or maybe you were solo queuing and your duo partner got on, it's gonna be like, oh, this is piece of cake, right? And then for the like point wise, there's definitely a lot of equations. I don't know all the equations that go into it, but it's like your team's average rank versus their average rank compared to your rank is how many points you'll get. And then like if you're queuing with someone, it'll also up and down. Like I personally, I know you can queue with people. Like let's say you're Celestia 1, you could queue with a GM1, but that difference in rank, it's terrible because the Celestia 1 player is going to get like 15 points and lose 25. It's like you can't win that many games to make up for that 10 points that you're missing on the win loss. So I'll just tell my friends, I'm like, if you're not within one rank or when I'm in eternity, like 50 to 100 points, like I'm sorry, it's just bad for me. Like you can't win like 70% of games no matter where you're at. So it doesn't make sense to like put yourself in such a hard spot to climb.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, there might be only a few players I would do that with, like Formal or somebody like that.
Yeah, like someone you know you could win with that's just low rank because they haven't played or something.
Yeah. Now I am 0-2 a Formal on my team. I'm just gonna throw that one out there, but that's all right, no problem. Maybe that's a me
He's
problem though.
throwing, bro. He's throwing.
Yeah, he's gotta be. He's gotta be. Do you? So we kind of like touched upon this a little bit earlier when it came to talking about the different roles and like main tank, off tank, and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of flexing roles, do you think you have to be able to flex roles as you climb ranked? Because I know there's a lot of players, and this just might be out of frustration, but there's a lot of people that shit talk, at least in the higher ranks, and they're just like, man, you're telling me like you can't flex and you're in GM or you're in Celestial and you're not like you can't flex. I'm like, man, this guy probably can't even flex either. But like, do you think that you have to be able to flex to different roles when you climb?
I think you should be comfortable doing it. I don't think you should force yourself to like hard play the role. So let's just say you're like a diamond player and you're a support main, but you've got like a little bit of strange time. You don't have to like go play a lot of quick play and fully understand strange or like think about it. You just need to be able to play the character to an okay level. Like I personally flex to like Invis or Luna, and like if my team is doing good, like we'll win. Like I'm not gonna throw the game. And that's where I would go back to the no matter what role you play, you should understand the roles. Because a lot of the game is just understanding it. Like you might not be mechanically the best support player if you're a tank man and you can flex to it. But like I understand where I want to stand, how I want to use my cooldowns, what their tanks are looking for, especially too. Like, oh, if I see they're strange kind of posturing forward, even though we're winning the fight, he might be going for an ult. Like I could boop him away pretty easy. So I think just understanding the roles is good enough. You don't really have to put in time practicing it. And then I would like when I fill is when people just steal my role or they're being like dickheads or something like, no, give me strange. Like I'm not gonna play. I had someone do that on Spider Island. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm not filling. If you want an invis, go it yourself. I'm like, okay, I'll go invis. We lost. I won't lie. It was partially my fault for sure because I'm not the greatest invis player, but neither is he. So sometimes that just happens. And if you want to win, normally you want to have two healers. That's pretty much guaranteed. So sometimes you will have to fill healer, and I think everyone should at least play one healer that they can play at the level or at least one level below their skill. So like your Celestial player, play it to a GM level, try and understand it. Maybe watch some streams or watch some game. Like, yeah, just understanding the role as a whole, all the roles is really important.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. There's I've had a few games where people don't know how to play healer, and I'm just thinking in my head like, man, I kind of feel like this role is easy, but maybe that's just because I play it all the time. So like it's just easier to me. But like I'll have like DPS mains on my team, and say for example, I'm blessed with 4 DPS mains for some reason, and like one tank
Thank you,
main.
God. I love to
Yeah.
win.
Yeah. And like just me as the healer, and everybody's like, all right, like who's gonna play healer? And I'm just like, all right, come on, someone play healer. And everybody's like, can't play healer, can't play healer. I'm like, bro, just whip out Luna Snow. Like she's up. Nope, don't know how to
Yeah,
play
like you
Luna.
come on, you
Yeah,
can aim. Like
yeah,
if you could play Namora, you can hit Luna shots, I'm certain.
yeah. So it's very interesting, but it kind of has like that Smite effect. I remember with in Smite, for example, I was really bad at Tyr in the solo lane, but I could play him like in support. So like I don't know what it was, but like I was mechanically better with him in support. So I think like maybe you just have better mechanics in your given role. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just like fully understand it. Like you know your job in the support role. And normally it's like for Tyr, for example, it's like more peel and less like hard engaging. So maybe you'll go for like a tank push rather than going for a backline as the solo laner. So yeah, there's definitely like a difference there. And I can see like, oh yeah, I'm really good at hitting Ymir with my Tyr push, but when it comes to like a Discordia, like I'm not comfy with that.
Yeah, and I apologize for everybody that doesn't know what Smite is. We're just talking. We're some Smite players going into rivals, so
Call us guilty. We're my players.
sorry about that. So I kind of want to go over a little bit more situational things. And I do want to go over some clips of you, if that's cool, like in a little bit.
Sure.
But one thing I wanted to ask is that what do you do? And the same is going to be said for healers. But what do you do if your DPS isn't doing damage? So, say for example, you're playing really well, but like you see a lot of your DPS players aren't doing damage. Is there anything that you, as a tank player or as a different player, can potentially do about that? Do you just like boop them off the DPS for and say I'm going to DPS, or like do you try to enable them to a certain extent or play with them more? Does your playstyle change at all? I guess is what I'm trying to say. If your DPS isn't doing the necessary damage and it's a clear DPS gap in the game.
So what the mindset I go into ranked with, because there's 5 random people on your team if you're solo queuing, or maybe there's 3 if you're trio queuing, is just play the best game you can. So if your DPS are shitting it up, there's not much you can do. Like, I mean, if you're a Luna, you could snowflake them. But what you can do is play better yourself, right? Like if I'm the Strange, maybe my DPS aren't playing good because I'm not like making the space they need. Like maybe I'm taking space, but I'm not taking it properly. Or like when I go to attack their backline, their Strange is trading and he's just doing more. Like there's a lot of things that go into the game where it might not really be your DPS's fault, even if they're like 2-7. Maybe it is your healer's fault. Like your off healer just hard looking at your Strange. Like they're just full tunnel visioned in, not even trying to heal any backliner. So I would just play the best game you can. And if you lose, try and focus on what you could have done better, right? Like sometimes there is none. You got to understand, like, sometimes you're just going to lose and there's not much you can do. But unless you're playing perfectly, there's always something you can do better. So just focus on yourself. Don't really worry too much.
Yeah, and Alfie, if you're that stranger, like I don't understand why you're complaining at the healers. They're playing fine when you're getting all the heals.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not taking any damage.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel that. I feel that. I think a lot of people, because I try to make YouTube videos around like being a better support player, and one comment that I kind of see across some of the videos is that like, oh, I'm in plat or I'm in gold, I'm trying to climb, and like my DPS just aren't doing damage, or like maybe my tanks are just complete ass. Like I don't know like how to do or how to climb in this role and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is tough especially on support as well. I think it's probably easiest to like force your way to win as a tank player because you are controlling the tempo of the battlefield. Like a lot of people can play an average support, a few people can play a great support, and like very few are awesome and just don't die and have perfect ultimates, right? It's very like skill floor is low, ceiling is super high, one of the highest in the game. And then tanks is just like you're doing your job and you can win. Same thing with DPS. I would definitely say for the support players out there, it is hardest for you guys to just climb, especially solo queue. And that's where I would go back to the point I made earlier. you see a good DPS, even if it's the guy on the other team, add him and play with him. Like up your chances of being able to have that good player on your team. And then maybe even avoid some of the players on your team. You're like, that guy stunk it up. Like abuse the system as much as you can. You can change your avoid list as much as you need. So keep that shit up to date, man.
What if there was like a preferred list too? Like I prefer this guy's on my team.
Dude, that'd be awesome. You could get like the whole lobby just planned out. Like, all right, those two are queuing with each other. So if I avoid one, I'm good. Get this guy on my team. Just like a whole stat, like just analysis of the game. Like, all right, I've got it now. We're good.
That would be like the biggest cheat code ever. What kind of meta do you think that we're in right now? So this is season 1, about to be, well, I guess the mid-season patch is coming out in like a couple days. Looking, I guess, at the current meta, and I mean, I'm assuming you saw most of the changes for like the characters.
Yeah, I read a decent amount. We've been theorizing a little bit in my team, but it's definitely going to be hard to theorize about patches without actually playing it, in my opinion.
So do you think we're like right now in a triple healer meta, or do you think it's like more of a 2-2-2? Like, what is your preferred team comp?
I prefer 2-2-2 every game.
Okay.
I think in lower levels, triple support works because not everyone understands their job and how to counter it. And it can work like if there's 3 support mains on my team, I don't necessarily mind triple healer because it's like they're going to do more on Mantis than on Namor or on Hela. Like they just don't have that character's skill set to play. So there's no reason to like force 2-2-2 because triple support can work. But if I could just pick the teammates that spawn in, it's 2-2-2. And there's like very few teams in the competitive environment that force 3-3-3 or 2-1-3 or 1-2-3, whatever, like 3 support meta. There's only like certain bans that kind of force it. Like for example, my team bans Luna a lot because we just don't like Namor. We play a lot of dive, and it's impossible to dive into Namor. And one team we played against banned, I believe, Cloak and Loki. So that left Invis Mantis as like the 2 healers that were left open. And last time we just ran Invis Mantis, it was like, we don't have a lot of healing. So what we did this time is we ran Adam Mantis Invis. I solo tanked. So our off tank went to Mantis. And it worked insanely well because we had 2 off healers. We had a Bond win con to like cycle around. We had 2 Tranks. We had the res. So it was just super easy to play around. So sometimes there are comps that like get forced into play. But that's like the only time that my team has played 3 support.
And like the same is just true for ranked as well. Like you just want 2-2-2 in ranked.
Yeah, I think 2-2-2 is ideal. I wouldn't like if you're a DPS main, don't force yourself to play support to get the triple healer. Just play DPS if you got 2-2-2.
Yeah.
And then if you're a tank main and there's 3 tanks in your team, don't force the triple tank either. Like 2 healers is definitely good.
Yeah. Be comfortable with what you're playing.
Yeah.
Top bans right now. What do you think? So like I know obviously Wolverine gets banned. You said 50% of the time, I believe, earlier.
Yeah, I looked at the website because I ban it a lot. It's like 44 to 47 or something.
Of course,
a
you're
lot
a
of the
tank
time
man.
he'll get double banned. Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to get pinned, bro. Unless I'm queuing with an invisible man to pull that guy off my back, like I'm banning that character. Sometimes I'll ban something else first, like a Luna, because it's banned so often that it is often the first ban for both teams. Like I would say 40% of games right now, it's just double banned because both teams will just ban it. I would say other bans, Hulk is super banned. I personally don't believe he has to be, but it's like if a team does run Strange Hulk and you're on Strange Mag, their team comp is just better. They take more space, they mark more angles. You guys are both kind of doing the same job. Duelist wise, I've seen a lot of Magic bans, but that's probably just because Magic's like a one-trickable character. Like there's a lot of Magic one-trick players. Hela gets banned like a little bit. I'd say maybe 10% of games. Storm is banned almost as much as Wolf, maybe like 35. And then tank wise, it really is only Hulk. Sometimes Strange will get banned against like me or like 3 other players. But I don't think any other tanks get banned. And then strategists, Luna's banned a good amount, I would say. Cloak, surprisingly, even though she's like the best, doesn't get banned that often. I want to say it's only like 3% of games I see her get banned.
You said Cloak it's been 3%.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, she might be like a higher in the stats thing, but just from like my experience, I don't really, I like rarely see her get banned. I see a lot more Luna or even Loki. I feel gets banned more often.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. I was like, man, like Cloak's so much better than Luna. Well, not so much, but Cloak I think is better than Luna. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, first of all, people just play Mag to counter the Cloak. I think
Yeah.
that's just been like one of the top things right now. It's Mag is the bane of my existence if I play. Dude, I have like a one death tolerance policy right now. If I'm playing Cloak and Dagger and I get Mag ulted once, I'm off. I'm playing something
You're
else.
like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, 100%. But I think the other thing too, and I was thinking more about this. I think it's the team ups, right? So like Namor and Luna's obviously very good. Jeff even has like a bug where he doesn't have to reload or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, I've seen that stupid shit, right? It's so annoying. The flank Jeff players all did that, and I didn't know about it. I'm like, oh, that explains why it works so well.
Exactly. So I think it's like all like the Luna team ups right now are just really broken. And so like
Yeah,
not only are you taking out one of the best ults in the game when you ban her, but then you're also taking out the ability to team up as well. So
yeah, and then no more. Like I said, my team likes to run a lot of dives, so we have pretty much strictly banned Luna for about 80% of our scrims, and we scrim like every day for about 2 hours. So it's banned like I think 100 times by our team in competitive play, and it is mainly for the Namor, but it's also like I can't strange ult the Luna. You can mag ult her, and the only thing you have to do different between her and Cloak is kill her like bonus health shield before you start mag ulting, which surprisingly not a lot of mag players do. They just rip that shit right away, and they're wondering like, oh, she's got 500 HP. Like maybe this 300 damage rock isn't gonna kill her.
is it 300 damage fully charged?
It's 300 for like if you just wait the whole timer, it scales from 100 to 300, and then it's 3 points of damage per point that you have. So it's technically up to 600 if you throw it at 100 charge and wait till the very last second, or I guess 597 because if it gets to 100 it breaks. But
Yeah. Okay. And so like just to summarize, your top say four bands right now, like what do you think? Just to summarize.
I would say Wolverine, Storm, Luna, and Hulk are probably the top four. I would say they often those four characters are just banned in a lot of games. Like one team will ban Storm, the other team will ban Wolf, and then Luna will get banned, and then whatever. Normally the fourth ban is kind of Phil. Luna, Wolf, and Storm are like high up there as just get that out of my lobby.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So I want to try to go over like one or two clips. I haven't done this before, so this ought to be interesting.
Yes, I think in this clip, the whole time we're like hard calling push forward. So the flight up was like preemptive by me. Normally that's like my play to block the Hela thing. But our cloak was like, oh, I'm gonna ult. So we don't really need the flight to block anymore. So I immediately fall. And now with all these support ults going off, I'm like, okay. I'm thinking I'm about to ult here somehow. And I ideally want their Luna to like push forward.
So here you're walking up and you're waiting for their supports to ult.
Yeah, so we hear the Hela. We're like hard pushing. So we're on, I believe, Magic, Mr. Fantastic, Double Shield. So if anyone's played Brigitte from Overwatch, she is basically the same thing as Fantastic in this comp, where you just like thrust onto your Magic and just give her like 150 extra HP. So we do that. We bubble the Magic and we just hard send it. So we're playing like a super brawl comp here. So pretty much just us walking forward will often force a support ult.
You're shifting up in the air here to block the hell ult, and then she just falls down when she sees that.
She didn't fall down. It was so our cloak called that she was ulting. So I was gonna block if we weren't gonna mirror support ults, and then we just play for burn. But in this scenario, our cloak's like, oh, I got it, I'm ulting. So like walk forward. So I just dropped because there's no need for me to waste my shield or anything. Just sitting up there blocking it because no one should die to it with a cloak ult on the ground.
And then here, are you like looking for the mag ult the whole time, or like was it more spontaneous? Like, oh shit, he's mag ulting.
No, it was the whole time. So our cloak dashed in, won, and they were like, me and our mag are both calling like, come back, come back. And I see their mag. I'm like, oh, yep, there he is, shield up to his face. And then at this point, I'm like thinking about how I want to ult, right? So if they all, for example, kited back to that door, kind of to the right of my screen, then I wouldn't really be looking too hard. But I see this strange, I think in like 2 seconds, he postures like to my right when I swing left. So I'm like, okay, it's actually going to be pretty easy for me to look for a backline ult here. So I'm like I've kind of counted this Luna ult, but I'm also just playing off of like instinct, and it works out pretty good, as you can see. I wasn't like, it wasn't necessarily, I hope I get the Luna perfectly timed. It was just, I'll get everyone else, and Luna's either going to be stunned or not, right? And like, she can't keep all three of them alive anyway, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like you pretty much saw their shield character go out of the way, and you said this is a perfect opportunity for me to jump in.
Yeah, it's like if the Strange was in front of me, I'm not just gonna ult on the ground like this. I might call like break shield, or we just hard walk forward. But the reason I ult on the ground is because I see their Strange go for like a trade play. Like, we're basically diagonal from each other right now. And I think he also, yeah, I think he might have also ulted. I'm not 100% certain.
Do you ever like walk up as a strange when you don't have ult to kind of psych out the enemy? Like I feel like stranges could do that. I'm like, some guy like flies at me. I'm like, oh shit, this guy has ult. Let me like take evasive maneuver actions, right? But maybe sometimes he doesn't have ult and he wants to see how you're gonna react. Do you ever kind of like do that as like a psychological thing?
I think you could. The cooldown on the shift is like a little bit long to just be using it like willy nilly. But a lot of the time, I will, like, when I actually do have ult, I'll go up and like force the look of a play and then not follow through with it. So like, do the same thing you're talking about, but normally I just only do it when I have ult. So psychologically, like, oh yeah, I'm going for ult. I'm going for ult. Look at me. And then if they're strange, is like, oh god, back up, and he's hard shielding his team. I'm not just gonna rip it because I've committed to the play. I'm just gonna be like, okay, I'll just fall down and use that. So I wouldn't necessarily waste cooldown to just psychological threat. But you could, like, there's probably a scenario it's like, oh, I could threaten them and like stop their push.
Yeah, gotcha. So here's another clip. So this one was of you. I think it was canceling out some support ults.
Yeah, this was, I think, a Loki copied in Invis here.
Right now, what you're just kind of you're turning around, you're kind of seeing what's going on. I'm assuming your Invis woman calls out she's going to ult or something like that, so that's why you back up to playing it. They counter ult, and what do you kind of like think about this situation right here when you're about to jump in mid ult? Do you think like, hey, like their Invis woman ult's about to be down? I know that just because I know like the time of it. Like, what are you thinking about when that's happening?
So prior to this, we were like hard pushing with a Hulk and a Punisher ult, I believe, around the corner. Our Hulk like went in and he called it. He got demeched and he was obviously gonna die. So I'm pulling back, kiting, because they actually pre-copied like when the Hulk punny like went for an engage. It's like, oh, they copied. So I'm calming that to my team, and then our Invis or Loki, I can't remember who ulted exactly, but someone was like, oh, I'll mirror, don't worry. So in this scenario, what I'm looking for is to get above the heads of these Invises, so that way it's harder for them to boot me. Because if I go up in the air right now and they're kind of at like, let's just say a 45-degree angle, it's pretty easy for them to boot me. Like, I'm just getting slammed right in the face. But if I get above their head, they have to like full flick up to shoot me. And that's what you'll see I kind of do here. Get straight above. And then we actually combo with Bucky ult to put them in threshold, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to kill the Invis through her ultimate.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, especially as a fellow Invis player.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm dead.
Yeah, for sure.
And that one is also another good example of the Bucky too. So if the Bucky was like charging hook, I'm not gonna fly up either. But in that scenario, he was like looking to my right. Clearly, it's somebody else. So I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm looking at both the Invises. They're not really focused on me. The Bucky's also not focused on me. So I'm like, this is a good time to fly up and ult.
All right, so I kind of want to get into some of the personal things. I feel like we have gone over a lot of just a lot of ways to like, especially play strange, but I feel like we've gone over a lot of ways to play tank, so I think this is actually really good so far. But just for you personally, do you have any like favorite maps that you play on?
I really like Path just because of the environment, honestly. And there's a fun portal sec that my team always does. So you know that statue, that big ass statue that's just fully destructible
Yeah.
out to the left. So we go up that ramp into the air and kind of face the portal towards like their spawn. You know that little room you can tuck into as support on defense?
Yeah.
On the left side. Like, you'll probably put your raccoon res in there or something, and flankers can kind of like come all the way up and around. So I angle it kind of towards that door from our attacking spawn out the right door, and we punish our turret through that just as the cart's about to come up to the ramp. And so far, that execution of that strategy is 100%. We've played it against our because we have a B team. We've done it like 12 times against them, and they have yet to come up with a strategy to beat it.
Really?
It's just like, Punisher turret is spraying through. I shield him. I jump through the portal onto that side, and the rest of our team just walks up from cart side. And it's either like we kill someone with the turret, or we hard force them into that little room, and then me as the Strange, and normally we have Hulk on that map, will just mark that room and just hard set at that corner, and it just works every time.
I actually, I'm glad you brought up that portal play because one thing I kind of forgot to ask you earlier on was what you think of like strange portaling at the beginning. Like, are there certain like how do you portal? I guess in a game, are you portaling like mid map maybe to get like an off portal a little bit, or are you portaling at the beginning in most games because you'll have it up like later down the round if you need it again? Like, how are you thinking about portaling?
So for domination, ITP every single first point, 100% of the time. I normally think about like what my comp is doing. For example, there's one map, Burn into T'Challa, where it's got that server room on the one side that's kind of like elevated up a little bit. The high ground is like that tube with a circle on top, and it's all breakable. Like that whole thing will just collapse. You know what I'm talking about? So a lot of the teams TP to that high ground, which is destructible, because they think like, oh, if we take high ground, we take the angles. But because it's destructible, my team thought, well, what if we went to the server room? So we actually changed it to the server room because our supports have permanent cover there. They can sit behind the computer consoles and everything. All we have to do is just shoot at the height, and their height's gone. Their advantage that they TP'd for is null and void. Now we have the height that they can't really get to without using a movement ability or crossing a large open field. So I would say on Dom, always, and think about what your team does. So let's say you're on a hyper brawl comp with like a Wolverine, maybe a Fantastic or like a Magic or something, Strange, Hulk, Invis, and Loki. You guys win like a lot of brawls versus 80% of comps. So if you think their Strange is also going to TP, because a lot of Stranges do on Dom, it's like a pretty consistent thing, you can wait for their TP to pop and then pop it above their head and just dive in onto them. But if you're on more like a poke comp, for example, let's bring up the Hell's Heaven map, for example, where it's got that super tall high ground on the one side and then just a big open area to the left, and it's got the lava like way off on the side. Sometimes if you're on a poke comp, it can be best to TP out into the open and just let them take the high ground, because if you know they're also going to TP and they're on a brawl comp, if you TP into the high ground with them, it's like a 10-foot area that you're fighting in. So if they're on brawl, they're going to win that fight, especially if you're on poke. Like you have nothing to do. So you TP out to the wide side, you still have pretty good angles and point control, and you just neutralize their brawl comp because they have to cross like a 40-foot distance to get to be able to brawl as a team. And if you've taken angles, you fully neutralize it because they can't brawl as a team anymore.
Yeah, I've always wondered like how important high ground actually is in this game, considering so much of it can just be destroyed.
Yeah,
Obviously, the stuff that can't be destroyed, I'm assuming you want height advantage just about any video
for
game
sure.
that you play. But yeah, I mean, like just like you said, right? A lot of it can be destroyed. So you go to server room on that one map. What was it called again?
Burn into T'Challa. I don't know like the individual.
Yeah, I know. Like I know exactly. Like I have the image in my head. Like I know what you're talking about. I just don't know the map. But yeah, no, definitely. I think it's that sort of destructible environment is can make it kind of challenging to play high ground. So I definitely agree with that. And that's a very interesting strat that you actually just go right into the middle and give up high ground, especially if they have better brawling comp. So
Yeah, it's and like you can just go. I would always CP and Dom, and then second round. I forgot to mention this. Sometimes I think about ult econ. I normally ult track a lot. So like for example, let's just say they have 4 ultimates, 1 support ult, 2 DPS, 1 tank, and we've only got like 1 support ult, and it'll probably get forced. Let's just say they're on Star Lord Storm, and if they just rip Storm ult, my support's gonna have to ult most likely, and then they just have a better support ult and they should win. So you can kind of think about that and like, okay, well, if I TP and we're not able to farm ults in time, and I know they have ult advantage, then we just lose no matter what. Like we're just losing quicker. So you can actually not TP, walk up, call a dry fight. This is more for like a competitive thing, by the way. It's a little bit hard to do this in rank, but let's just say all 6 people are competent and understanding. Call a dry fight, which just means no ults. Your job is to just try and force them to ult. So maybe like focus their healers and just force out one of their ults. Get your ult econ back, lose that fight, most likely, unless some random pick happens where it's just super winnable, and then TP at that point after you've lost the fight. when you have good ult econ, when you have an advantage to take. 80% of the time, I'll still just TP anyway, because normally it'll be like, oh, our support has ult in like 20%, so you might be able to farm it before their Storm decides to ult early.
Yeah.
And then third point, it's the same thought as the second point. Like, if you have terrible ult econ, sometimes it's like a good thing to hold it to TP back when you do have good ult econ, like not waste that extra 20% of tick.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you mentioned that. I didn't realize they were calling those dry fights. I was thinking about like a strat on Clintar. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. You know, the one with like
Yeah,
the
Clintar.
slug?
Yeah,
Yeah.
symbiotic surface one. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Clintar one.
And I was thinking about like a strat on attack. I was like, well, couldn't you theoretically not hit the enemy and just like it's a convergence map. So couldn't you theoretically not hit the enemy, have them hit you, and then just have your healers kind of like farm up ults, and if you guys die, it's whatever. And then next go around, you guys have healer ults and they don't, you should just be able to take point.
Yeah, that is actually like a strat that is underutilized, I would say. People do try, like on Dom and other things, where it's like, oh, go take poke. Like, you'll just stand there, like, no strange shield, no nothing, and just take poke. It's definitely something you could even try and do. Like, hey, Strange, I know you want to, like, get your ultimate here, but if you just stand there and don't do damage and just take damage, we'll get cloak ult, and we can just cloak ult through. Like, that is totally a valid, and honestly, might even be one of the smartest way to play it, just because of how quickly, especially now, supports charge ultimates relative to DPS. I would say next patch, it's going to be a little bit harder to do strats where it's like, don't deal damage, because Storm, for example, will most likely have her ult before your cloak ult, even if you aren't dealing damage and you're just like fully taking it.
Yeah, I will say like Invis Woman ult though, that thing comes up. So if your team is grouped together and you're getting those AoE auto heals on everybody, that thing comes up just like that. I mean, it
Oh
is
yeah,
so fast.
she is super quick, especially because she pulls like some of the highest damage numbers.
Supports, yeah.
Yeah, the supports, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, she just has like a lot of AoE and stuff like that too. So, are you excited for the thing? Like he's gonna be a tank, right?
Yeah, he's like a Doomfist style character, like just full charge in, slam the ground.
I didn't read too much of his abilities, but like I read his ult's like a big knockup, right?
Yeah, it's like I forget the Valorant character, like Breach or something, I think is what it is. We just like ults the ground and it just shockwave knocks up everyone in front of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think most likely it won't be me playing it because he seems more like a dive tank. So I'll probably still be on like Magneto or Strange for my team, but I'm definitely excited to play it in rank to see. And who knows, maybe in comp I'll whip it out. If it's like the Thing Venom kind of dive comp, that might be fun.
Yeah. And he's probably gonna have a pair with like Invis Woman too, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember. I know that Storm has one with Torch. It might not be with Invis. I'm not sure. I don't actually know if he has a team up with anyone.
Hopefully he does.
Yeah. Oh no, he has one. His is with Wolf. That's what it is. He has the same thing as Hulk, where you can like throw the Wolverine.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I didn't see anything about in like the little video about like an Invis or Fantastic or any of those of the four.
I thought that was a useless team up until like I saw a kill cam once of like a Hulk throwing a wolf at me, and then I got like dashed again. I was like, okay, this has some merit now.
Yeah, it works pretty well on Dom. I think Nightmare was one of the teams that did it first, where they would just like have the Hulk and the Wolverine just ready to go, and they just jump and throw the Wolverine on the Strange, and just like create chaos around the area. It's a super good combo with him.
Oh, dude, that character that character is just so silly. Such a
Yeah,
silly.
get him out. Remove him from the game.
Do you have any extra tips for players looking to play competitive? Obviously we went over like a lot of stuff today. But like anything extra that kind of comes to mind, maybe that we didn't mention or talk about.
To get into competitive, it's pretty easy. There's an LFG Discord. I can send it to you if you don't have it already.
Sure, yeah, I can put it in the description.
You just post it in there, what you have, what your goals are, what you've done in past experiences. And then like, let's say you're already on a team to improve yourself. It really is just think about the game, like VOD review. Doesn't have to be with like a coach or with your entire team. Just like you yourself can go in, watch players better than you. I watch people like TTK, top tier kid. I watch his Strange games all the time, and I'm like, oh, he does this on this map, or like, oh, I see how he's like shield cycling, or just like very micro things. Just watching POVs of players and even POV of yourself, like, oh wow, I grief there. Like you can't really see that in the moment. So I'll honestly dedicate like we scrim for 2 hours with my team. And then for the next hour afterwards, we'll like talk about the games, or if there was something really specific that I was thinking of or someone else was thinking of. it was like a good mention. Like, okay, we'll bring it up. Maybe we'll VOD review it. Like, oh, this dive felt really bad. And it doesn't even have to be about you. You can just think about your teammates. Like, oh, I don't think you did good there. Be willing to give and take criticism. Big thing. So like, don't just be submissive and sit there and like, oh, I don't want to like shit talk my teammates because I don't want them to hate me. Like, no, shit talk everyone. You know, like if somebody makes a bad play, tell them. Like the amount of people that respect me because I just like shit talk them is higher than if I was to just like passive aggressively complain. Like, I'm just gonna complain in someone's DMs. Like, just let it out because it'll just build if you hold it in. You know, like if you think someone's shit, just tell them their shit. And if you take it, like if you get called terrible, take it. Like don't not fight back, right? Like you're allowed to have your qualms and your opinions, but hear their opinion at least. You know, like sometimes I've been told, "Oh, you're dumb as hell here," and then I'll be like, "No, no, no, I'm actually like super smart. Like this was such a good play," and then we'll have like a 30-minute debate. And sometimes we just disagree, and that's fine. But you know, sometimes you do have to just give it. Like if don't just be too stern to not give up that you were wrong. It's totally fine to be wrong after time too. Like sometimes it takes an hour for someone to convince me that I made a mistake, but then I'll admit, right? Like it takes time sometimes.
And this is mainly for like comp, right? We're not talking about ranked here.
No, no, fuck. Don't worry about the rank scene.
I feel I feel like people in ranked are kind of like unreasonable. Like in comp, it's like okay, you all trust each other to a certain extent, which is why you're teaming together. And in ranked, I feel like it's like if you tell someone their shit, all of a sudden you're just gonna start this massive fight.
Yeah, I
And
know.
like,
I normally try and stray from it. Sometimes I let out a little bit of shit talk every now and then myself, but like in ranked, if you're trying to be like critical of a teammate, just tell them calmly. You know, don't be like, "Yo, Psylocke, what the hell are you dying for all the time?" I had a guy that was griefing my game, and he was complaining about heals. It was like yesterday, and I'm like, "Oh, you're just going in too far." Like I just said it calm, and I wasn't like mad. I'm just like, "Oh, well, you're dying because I see you like 14 nautical miles northeast of our healers. Like, there's no way they can heal you." So just tell people straight. If they hate you, like you're probably gonna lose anyway if you already think that someone's terrible. So it's okay to like give them your opinion. Just be calm and try and be nice. You know?
yeah, for sure, absolutely. Especially if they're like good and they're complaining, it's like, this guy might be an asshole, but I might want to team with them later. So
Yeah, like I can see he's killing people. He's just dying. So maybe I can like help him out. Or like your supports ult terribly. Like don't just yell at them. Be like, how did we double ult? Oh, you're
yeah,
both so bad. It's like maybe next time help them. Like if they're both not talking, say, okay, we invis ult first. You know, like you can choose your own destiny. So use your tools at hand.
yeah. Sometimes you just have to put in more effort than not.
Yeah.
Any future plans for rivals for you? So like, are you looking to go pro? Looking to go into the pro scene?
I'm definitely hoping to.
Yeah,
I haven't heard like an established pro. There's like rumors that they're trying to make like an actual pro circuit. Don't know how it's necessarily going to work, if it's like invitation or they're going to do like a qualifier thing, kind of like Smite Open Circuit was, where like you qualify in. Um, there is that MRI, the Invitational, where I think 8 teams got invited to. My team, unfortunately, wasn't one of them because the requirements were like doing good last tournament, and I didn't play with this team, and none of them really played the game last tournament, or they did, but they're like top 64. So obviously not top 8 material, but that's definitely promising to see. And I think probably by summer, I would imagine there's gonna be like an established pro scene of sorts. And there's tournaments like every weekend. We played one on Monday. There's like a Swiss league going on every Sunday. So if you're wanting to get in a competitive scene, there's a lot of tournaments that are free entry. Like I don't think we've even paid a dime yet as a team.
really. So there's a lot of third party tournaments. Are those in like different discords?
Right now it's going around a lot by word of mouth. Start.gg has a lot of options that a lot of people post their tournaments on there, but there's been like some more underground ones, which is like $100 tournament on a weird ass website that just a lot of teams find. And because my team has like 3 teams and a lot of outreach, like we scrim a lot of other top teams, we'll normally just be like, "Hey, we found a tournament. I don't know how we found it."
Yeah.
That LFG Discord that we'll post in the description will have some tournaments posted, but they haven't been super great with it, in my opinion. But sometimes they'll be in there. But like the last 2 that we played in weren't even in there. So they're not doing the greatest job of posting them in there.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. Well, Alfie, dude, thanks so much for coming on today, man. I appreciate you sharing the knowledge with me and everybody else. And hopefully, hopefully we get a lot of tank mains on the channel now too. And right now it's just
Yeah,
mostly healer mains, but after seeing this, maybe it's a mix.
we bring in like 2 strange players and are just super excited.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, it was a pleasure.